Alright, ladies and gentlemen, the books is in. The books are in. Yep. They're in. They're here. ETM Hotel, Rennie Sean. Welcome in peace. My name is Sean. I'd like to appreciate everybody for tuning in to this episode. It's not really well, you can call it a Signs with Sean episode, but I am streaming from Facebook and YouTube, so I won't be on Facebook too long. I just want to let everybody know that we are going to be on the Master Warrior Clan YouTube channel moving forward. Real quick, I just wanted to kind of talk about briefly the Tuskegee experiment. There's a lot of misconceptions, misinformation that surrounds the Tuskegee experiment, and people tend to assume certain things about the experiment and, not really deal with it from the actual sources. And, you still have descendants of the experiment that still exist, and people tend to not listen to them or appreciate their perspective. So a lot of things begin to get murky and they begin to get tainted with misinformation and a lot of pseudoisms surrounding that whole situation. So we're going to uncover some truths, and hopefully we all can learn something from this that will help our children properly understand what this was, how it took place, and why did it happen, right? Because at the end of the day, we need to know, why did it happen? All right. So instead of speculating, appealing to emotions, instead of, assuming, we're just going to deal with it. So if you're on my Facebook right now, I am going to tell you that I will be ending it shortly. We will be on the Master Warrior Clan YouTube channel. But I am going to give you this. All the sources will be in the description of the video, so you don't have to take my word for it. You actually can look at everything and deal with it from that perspective. And hopefully, you take some away from this conversation, because it has to be had. It's much needed. It's much needed. So before I begin, I do want to say peace to everybody in the chat. I see Chavis, Keisha, from West Africa, peace. Water Lafayette, peace. Too Smooth, peace. Gifted, peace. or not. Peace to everybody. I don't know who's on the Facebook side, but let me see who we got showing some love over here on the Facebook side. Can you get it? Yeah. I got you, Terry. Yep. Let me put this here. And in the comment section of this live stream is the YouTube video. All right. So for everybody on Facebook that's tuned in right now, I put the YouTube description in the chat. And we're going to continue to build from there. And I just want to let everybody know that. So if you're interested in knowing more about the Tuskegee experiment, this is going to be an opportunity for us all to learn. So again, I will be ending the Facebook right now, and then we're going to get started on YouTube. So peace to everybody on Facebook. The link is in the description. Join me on YouTube. Be a part of the discussion, questions, answers. We're gonna deal with it all. So on that note, Facebook, Shimon Hotep. That's the part in peace. And we're gonna get it cranked up on YouTube as of right now. All right, so let me make sure I get this to Terry. Oh man, hope everybody having a good evening today. Peace to everybody that's in the chat right now. What's good with everybody, man? Hopefully you had a beautiful day. I don't want to hold people up. I want to get right to it. I want to hear the Black doctor's perspective. So I am going to include the Black doctor's perspective on Tuskegee. But before we actually get started, I want to briefly begin here. So let's see if we can do this from a historical perspective. All right. So peace to everybody. What up, Terry? Good to see you, sis. By the way, if you see Terry in the chat, she got some of the best cookies in the city, hands down. You see Terry Bush, that's where I get them cookies from. Y'all be seeing me post. That's where I get them from, right there. Yep. Cookies be spossing. So anyway, just a little quick PowerPoint right here of the Tuskegee experiment. I'm not really going to use this. This is something that they use in school from ages K through 12 and trying to educate them. Now, a lot of people refute a lot of the information that's actually on this and deal with it. But, you know, it says the duties of the health department and the syphilis control, okay? And then it shows reporting, laboratory clinics, follow-up, education. And right here it says, the second slide, it says, the U.S. Public Health Service began study on effects of syphilis in 1932. The Public Health Services, working with the Tuskegee Institute, began a study on the effects of syphilis on the human body. All right, so the experiment was about the effects of syphilis on the human body. All right, now, the U.S. Public Health Services began the study on effects of syphilis in 1932. The study was called the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. I repeat, the untreated syphilis in the Negro male. Next, the study initially involved 600 Black male volunteers, 399 with syphilis, 201 who did not have the disease. So you had 600 males, male volunteers, 399 with syphilis, 201 who did not have syphilis. That gives you your 600. Now, government officials recruited African American participants in the study by offering free medical care to them. They were also given free meals and burial insurance. Okay. The men recruited were mostly poor sharecroppers from Macon County, Alabama. Macon County had a particularly high rate of syphilis cases. These men had difficult lives, hoeing small plots of land, living in the wooden shacks, and picking cotton in the season. There was little wealth in Macon County and very small chance of seeing a doctor, even though syphilis was more rampant there than anywhere else in the South. These men enrolled in the study were never told they had syphilis. Instead, researchers kept this information from them and told the patients that they were being treated for bad blood, a local term used to describe several ailments, including syphilis, anemia, and fatigue. U.S. Public Health Services began the study on effects of syphilis. Now, this is interesting because I know a lot of people who aren't really familiar with the study. They're going to feel one way about it or the other, and they're going to say bull crap. They won't say this don't even sound right. So I'm just laying this out here before we transition otherwise, okay? In truth, the 399 syphilitic patients did not receive what they signed up for. They were never given the proper treatment needed to cure their syphilis. Since the government wanted to study untreated syphilis, the doctors were also interested in whether the disease affected whites and blacks differently. Each time they visited, they visited the doctors, the man thought their condition was being treated and cured. Instead, however, the medicine provided to them was fake and contained no medicinal properties. The doctors and nurses were not there to cure, but to observe the progress of untreated syphilis. Although originally projected to last 6 months, the study actually went on for 40 years. The entire time, the participants assuming they were being treated. Instead, the government was purposely letting their disease progress for study. Sound cruel. U.S. Public Health Service begins the study on effects of syphilis. So patients who are untreated sometimes develop no symptoms and sometimes spontaneously recover, but they can also suffer greatly. Rashes, skin growths, liver deformity, heart damage, paralysis, insanity, and death are all possible outcomes of untreated disease. Penicillin came into use in 1947, which could cure syphilis. Had penicillin been administered to the syphilitic men in the study, many would have led longer and more comfortable lives. However, the government did not treat them. To ensure that the men would show up for the painful and potentially dangerous spinal tap, the doctors misled them with a letter full of promotional hype. Last chance for the special free treatment. The fact that autopsies would eventually be required was also concealed. It was from the autopsies that the government would get their final data. The experiment continued in spite of the Henderson Act 1943, a public health law requiring testing and treatment for venereal disease, and in spite of the World Health Organization Declaration of Helsinki 1964, which specified that informed consent was needed for experiments involving human beings. By the time the study was exposed in 1972, 28 men had died of syphilis. 100 others were dead of related complications. At least 40 wives had been infected, and 19 children had contracted the disease at birth. Reconsider this poster. The duties of the health department in syphilis control. Considering what you have now learned about Tuskegee, does your interpretation of this poster and its purpose change? If so, you can explain that. And what does the message of this poster contradict the actions of the U.S. public health? All right, so that's 2 questions, right? It's 2 questions that are posed to you personally. Again, considering what you have now learned about Tuskegee, does your interpretation of this poster and its purpose change? And then in what ways does the message of this poster contradict the actions of the U.S. Health Department? All right. Now, the study becomes public. The story finally broke in the Washington Star on the 25th of 1972 in an article by Jean Heller in Associated Press. Her source was Peter Buxton, a former PHS venereal disease interviewer and one of the few whistleblowers over the years. When the experiment was brought to the attention of the media in 72, news anchor Harry Resner described it as an experiment that used human beings as laboratory animals in a long and inefficient study in how long it takes syphilis to kill someone. Many began to compare Tuskegee to an appealing experiment performed by the Nazi doctors on the Jewish victims during World War II. The PHS, however, remained unrepentant, claiming that the men had been volunteers and were always happy to see the doctors. And an Alabama state health officer who had been involved claimed somebody is trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. Under the glare of publicity, the government ended their experiment and for the first time provided the men with effective medical treatment for syphilis. The end of the story. After the Tuskegee study became public, it caused a public outcry that led the Assistant Secretary for Health and Scientific Affairs to appoint an ad hoc advisory panel to review the study. The panel had 9 members from the fields of medicine, law, religion, labor, education, health administration, and public affairs. The panel found that the men had agreed freely to be examined and treated. However, there was no evidence that researchers had informed them of the study or its real purpose. In fact, the men had been misled and had not been given all the facts required to provide informed consent. The men were never given adequate treatment for the disease. Even when penicillin became the drug of choice for syphilis in 1947, researchers did not offer it to the subjects. The advisory panel found nothing to show that subjects were ever given the choice of quitting the study, even when this new highly effective treatment became widely used. End of the story. Advisory panel concluded that the Tuskegee study was ethically unjustified. The knowledge gained was sparse when compared with the risk the study posed for its subjects. In October 72, the panel advised stopping the study at once. A month later, the Assistant Secretary of Health and Scientific Affairs announced the end of the Tuskegee study. In Tuskegee's wake, major changes in federal rules governing medical research were established, including written informed consent and the creation of institutional review boards to oversee human subject research. The study also created another legacy. It became a metaphor for the distrust of scientific research, the risk of the government provisions of medical care, and the exploitation of poor patients. Y'all might have seen him on TV before, Ernest Hendon. He received something from the government. All right. Also, this is why you should know who he is, because of Bill Clinton. Reparations. In the summer of 73, a class action lawsuit was filed on behalf of the study participants and their families. Fred Gray, a lawyer who had previously defended Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, was the lead attorney. In 1974, a $10 million out-of-court settlement was reached. This resulted in only around $37,000 for survivors. As part of the settlement, the U.S. government promised to give lifetime medical benefits and burial services to all living participants. The Tuskegee Health Benefit Program was established to provide these services. In 1975, wives, widows, and offsprings were added to the program. In 1995, the program was expanded to include health as well as medical benefits. It wasn't until May 1997 that the U.S. government acknowledged its wrongdoing during the experiments when President Bill Clinton issued a formal apology. The last study participant died in January 2004. The last widow receiving benefits died in January 2009. As of 2009, there were 15 offspring receiving medical and health benefits. There's the sources here. And I want to kind of jump here to the CDC. I really don't want to read the CDC, because most people in our community don't realize what the CDC is, but they also carry some factual information on the website as well. But I wanted to go to the final report, a 50-page PDF, something that most people have not read. It says the final report of the Tuskegee syphilis study ad hoc advisory panel. As you can see, Southern Illinois University School of Medicine Library for Springfield, Illinois. This is a U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare Public Health Service. This document was printed on April 28, 1973. Dr. Charles C. Edwards, Assistant Secretary for Health, U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare in Washington, D.C. Dear Dr. Edwards, the final report of Tuskegee syphilis study ad hoc advisory panel was transmitted herewith. The chairman specifically abstains from concurrence in the final report, but recognizes his responsibility to submit. Brodus N. Butler, PhD, President of Dillard University. All right, as you can see, 1973. In this document, there is the table of content. It has the first panel charter, the second panel charter, panel members, dates and places of meetings, the final report, report on charge 1, addenda to charge 1, section 2, report of charge 2, addenda to charge 2, section 3, report of charge 3. All right, so I would advise anyone that's interested in getting into charge 1, charge 2, charge 3 to specifically download this PDF. It's in the description, and you actually will learn more about the Tuskegee experiment based on the data, not speculation. All right, so here we go. Tuskegee Syphilis Study Ad Hoc Advisory Panel to the Assistant Secretary for Health and Scientific Affairs. Purpose: to fulfill the public pledge of the Assistant Secretary for Health and Scientific Affairs to investigate the circumstances surrounding the Tuskegee, Alabama study of untreated syphilis in the male Negro, initiated by the United States Public Health in 1932. Authority: the committee is established under the provisions of Section 222 of the Public Health Service Act, as amended 42 U.S. Code 217A, and in accordance with provision of Executive Order 11671. Which sets forth standards of the formation and use of advisory committees. Function: the committee will advise the Assistant Secretary for Health and Scientific Affairs on the following specific aspects of Tuskegee syphilis study. Determine whether the study was justified in 1932 and whether it should have been continued when penicillin became generally available. Recommended whether the study should be continued at this point in time. If not, how it should be terminated in a way consistent with the rights and the health needs of its remaining participants. Determine whether existing policies to protect the rights of the patients participating in the health research conduct or supported by the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare are adequate and effective, and to recommend improvements in these policies if needed. I'm not going to bore you with all of that, but this is basically the groundwork of this ad hoc document. Now, we can go a little bit further into the charges. Report on charge 1. April 4th, 1973. Tuskegee Syphilis Study Ad Hoc Advisory Panel Acknowledgements. The subcommittee for charge 1. The co-chairman wished to acknowledge the input of members of the subcommittee and the panel members whose input and deliberations were essential to the final report in charge 1. Members of the subcommittee for charge 1. Ronald H. Brown, Dr. Vernal Cave, Barney H. Weeks, Dr. Gene Harris, co-chairman, Dr. Jean Sinkfold, co-chairman, and Fred Speaker, which was a panel member. Also, our sincere appreciation from staff members such as Dr. Robert Bakers, Mrs. Bernice Lee, and Jacqueline Eagle. All right, so I'm trying to lay the foundation down so that I can get to what I need to get to regarding the Black doctors. All right. And the first thing, I gave you the whistleblower or the people who broke the story. If you forgot who broke the story, I'm going to go back and let everybody in here know who broke the story. Jean Heller of Associated Press. Her source was Peter Buxton, a former PHS venereal disease interviewer and one of the few whistleblowers over the years. Jean Heller broke the story. Peter Buxton provided the information. Okay, so if you two people involved in bringing this truth to light. Okay. Now, Tuskegee study was one of several investigations that were taking place in the 30s with the ultimate objective of venereal disease control in the United States. Beginning in 1926, the United States Public Health Service, with the cooperation of other organizations, actively engaged in venereal disease control work. In 1929, the United States Public Health Service entered into a cooperative demonstration study with Julius Rosenwald Fund and the state and local departments in health and the control of venereal disease in 6 southern states. Here go the states involved: Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, Virginia. These syphilis control demonstrations took place from 1930 to 1932 and disclosed a high prevalence of syphilis, 35% in Macon County. A Macon County survey. Macon County was 82.4% Negro. The cultural status of this Negro population was low and the illiteracy rate was high. During the years of 1928 to 42, the cooperative clinical studies in the treatment of syphilis were taking place in the syphilis clinics of Western Reserve University, Johns Hopkins University, Mayo Clinic, University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Michigan. The Division of Venereal Disease, USPHS, provided statistical support, and financial support was provided by the USPHS and a grant from the Milbank Memorial Fund. These studies included the focus effects of treatment in latent syphilis, which had not been clinically documented before 1932. A report issued in 1932 indicated a satisfactory clinical outcome in 35% of untreated latent syphilitics. All right, now the finding of the Rosenberg of Oslo and the results of untreated syphilis became available in 1929. The Oslo study was a classical retrospective study involving the analysis of 473 patients at 3 to 40 years after infection. For the first time, as a result of the Oslo study, clinical data were available to suggest the probability of spontaneous cure, continued latency, or serious or fatal outcome. Of the 473 patients included in the Oslo study, 309 were living and examined and 164 were deceased. Among 473 patients, 27% were clinically free from symptoms of Wassermann negative. 14.8% had no clinical symptoms with Wassermann positive. 14.1% had the heart and vessel disease. 2.7% had general paresis. And 1.27% had tabs dorsalis. Thus, in 1932, as a public health service put forth a major effort toward control and treatment, much was still unknown regarding the latent stages of the disease, especially pertaining to its natural course and the epidemiology of late and latent syphilis. All right, so we have the facts and documentation pertaining to charge 1A. I'm not going to read you the charges per se, but we know what's going on. I gave you a brief description in the intro when we began to build. And then there's charge B. I'm doing this to show people that we actually have the primary source, and the primary source elaborates on what took place in Tuskegee. Now, many people in the Black community have walked around with our heads held high, disregarding science, saying you're not about to experiment on me because of the Tuskegee experiment. Most Black people in our community have also made the claim that they gave those men syphilis. Remember, there were 600 men. You remember how many had syphilis? 399, almost 400 of them had syphilis. 201 did not have the disease. So it was clear that all 600 men involved in the study did not have syphilis. The majority of them did, 399. The other 201 was just along for the ride. All right. In October 27, 1972, you have the letter of transmission. Dear Dr. Duval, a chairman of the Tuskegee Syphilis Study Ad Hoc Advisory Panel, I enclose our first report to you, related only to the second charge of the three assigned to the panel. Although one member of the panel was in the hospital on the day of this report was put into form for transmission to you. Her written suggestions concerning an earlier draft had been incorporated. Hence, the report represents concurrence of the panel as a whole. You will note that our initial recommendation called for some various steps on your part. We as a panel, along with the excellent staff that is assisting our work, stand ready to help you to implement the recommendations in any way. It is our understanding, on the basis of statements you made to us at our orientation meeting, that our reports to you, including this initial one, will be made public only by you, whether or not you decide to accept and implement our recommendations. Since agreeing on the enclosed report, 2/3 of our panel have been able to engage in firsthand investigation for 2 days in Macon County, Alabama. Nothing that we have discovered through this recent field visit has afforded us cause to alter any part of the enclosed report concerning the second charge, the firsthand investigation brief as it has been, and had provided us with information and new understanding that will prove of great value in subsequent work on charges 1 and 3. That's Brodus N. Butler, PhD, Chairman, Tuskegee Study Ad Hoc Advisory Panel. It further goes on and talks more about the study. And the brief little presentation that I gave you earlier, for those who may have missed it, we actually went into what the Tuskegee experiment was. I just wanted to give it a little bit more validity based on the actual documents. And every source that I have on the screen can be found in the description of this video and even on Facebook. All right. So I don't want to bore you to death with that. Now, you should remember this article. It was written by CBS, and it deals with the Tuskegee experiment study. Descendants speak about the tragedy, seek healing. All right. I included this in this conversation because the descendants speak, not in full detail, but in perspective. You know, it goes on to say here, like, here's a quote from one of the descendants. He was a wise man, very gentle. He was a disciplined man, active in the church, loved his family and extended his family. Said head of West Virginia, one of Tyson's 8 children. He was a good man. He had a sense of humor. He was a good dancer. So basically, he was they're elaborating about Johnny Maynard Tyson, one of the Tuskegee, the famed Tuskegee Airmen. All right. So this backs up what I read to you earlier, and I don't want to go all the way there because it's just redundant to actually do this, but just to give more validity to the entire conversation and put faces on here like Charlie Pollard's daughter, Ralphine Pollard, Harper, and others. Okay. So I want to move a little bit further, and I want to let you know here we have this document for you as well. The experiment right here, and it gets into, what you want to read from here and here. And then it goes into detail about those 2 things that's actually posted. And it breaks down exactly what was put into the presentation. And that is why I did that little 12-slide presentation for you. So that, I brought that up. I didn't put that together, but I wanted to do that first because of what was in here. All right. And what was in here is further, a little bit more clarification. Okay. So I want to get to the meat and potatoes of today. This is nothing that you really need, but I got it in here as a description to let you know that the full citation can be found in the National Archives, document number 649413, just so you know that we actually have all the evidence that we need for this study. All right, Dave B. Yeah, all my sources are always in the description. All right, so I'm going to let Dr. Ellis Dean take over. And hopefully y'all ready for this.
Good afternoon, and welcome to blackdoctor.org. I am Ellis Dean, a senior project manager with blackdoctor.org, and we are excited to have this discussion with you all today, to bring this discussion to you all today. As you all know, that over the past several months, and COVID really kind of dominated the headlines in 2020, and not only COVID, the actual disease, but the vaccine and the rollout of the vaccine and how the vaccine was developed, and really the push on getting Americans to be vaccinated from COVID. And so when that happens, and we're talking about it in the context of Black Americans, an ugly past comes into play, and that is the Tuskegee syphilis study, also known as the Tuskegee experiment. And we haven't really had the opportunity like this to discuss the Tuskegee experiment and its implications then in 1932 when the study began, in 1972 when it was made public, and now here in 2021 where, what advances have we made and what lasting implications that particular study has had, not only on medicine in a broad sense, but for Black Americans and our participation and our involvement in the medical profession. So I'm going to play a short video really kind of discussing the Tuskegee experiment. And then when we come back, we're going to have two medical professionals that are well accomplished, that we're going to really have a robust discussion. And we'd love to have your comments, a robust discussion about the Tuskegee experiment and where we are today with regards to the COVID vaccination. So here's our short video, and then we'll come right back.
They were told they'd get treated for their bad blood. Instead, hundreds of poor Black men became participants unknowingly in a shocking and truly shameful chapter of American medical history. In 1932, the United States Public Health Service launched an unethical research project to examine the effects of untreated syphilis. The project was called the Tuskegee Study because it recruited 600 Black men living in Tuskegee, Alabama. Researchers told the men that they were being treated for bad blood, a term used locally to describe anything from fatigue to anemia. They promised the men free medical treatment if they participated. While 2/3 of the men in the study were confirmed to have syphilis, not one received proper treatment for the disease they had contracted.
So this was a study in which there was no consent on the part of those who were being studied, also deception on the part of the U.S. government.
When penicillin became the recommended treatment for syphilis in the 1940s, Tuskegee researchers scandalously withheld the drug from the men in the study so that they could continue to chart the course of the disease when untreated. Many patients experienced damage to their vital organs and nervous systems. For some, the lack of treatment led to death.
The great shame of the study is that the men thought that they were being treated. Treatment was withheld from them, even after it was very clear what kind of medical treatment would cure them of syphilis.
In 1972, an Associated Press article exposed the Tuskegee study after one of the participants brought the story to a civil rights attorney. Only then, after 40 years, was the study brought to an end. The case was settled out of court for $10 million.
This long history of medical experimentation on African Americans creates a sense of distrust a distrust of doctors and physicians, a distrust of medical care.
In 1997, President Bill Clinton formally apologized to the victims of the study. The president's apology was a welcome first step, but we still have a long way to go before the legacy of mistrust of science within the Black community is fully overcome.
Well, that was Henry Louis Gates, as we all know, and he kind of gave a history. So I'm going to bring on Dr. James Gavin and Dr. Lenore Coleman. We're going to bring on Dr. Lenore Coleman and Dr. James Gavin here to really kind of discuss the Tuskegee experiment, what happened, and where we are today. So Dr. Coleman, as we get Dr. Gavin connected again, Dr. Coleman, when you watch that video, what is your first response? And when you first learned about the Tuskegee experiment, what was your first response?
Thank you so much. I wanted to, thank you so much for allowing Healing Our Village to be able to participate in this program today. So the audience sort of knows a little bit about me. I am a pharmacist by training, a certified diabetes educator, and actually worked within the pharmaceutical industry as one of their scientific liaisons for about 6 years. And in that working within that industry, I learned a lot about clinical trials. And what my job is to try to reach out and educate the community regarding clinical trials and actually help some of the trials that we were involved in to get more minorities. Currently in this country, there's only about maybe 3% of people of African American and African Americans that are even enrolled in clinical trials. So as we look at all drugs, all vaccinations, all these types of things, because of the lack of African American participation, that has always been a problem. And so that was what I actually did and have been doing over the last 6 years or so. So we learned a lot about that, because when we went out to the community to talk to people about, participation in clinical trials, one of the first things that always came up with African Americans, well, I'm not trying to be a guinea pig, and I'm not, remember what happened with the Tuskegee trial. And so I'm very familiar with the study. I'm very familiar with what happened. When you're talking about that particular study in the context of what's happening in 2021, okay, with the COVID epidemic and the vaccination, it's apples and oranges. Because we're in a different time period. The level of knowledge is different. The number of African American scientists and professionals is hugely different in terms of just volume, numbers that are out here who are aware of and experts in this particular area, either functioning as clinicians or as scientists. So yes, the Tuskegee experiment, and I usually, it really was, United Public Health Service was really the study, right? So it really wasn't Tuskegee, but that's okay. I realized it was terrible, but those are actually in the past, and things are much, much different now. And so I don't think that there would be any way for that to happen in 2021. I just don't think we're too, as they say, woke, right, to have that kind of thing happen. So that's sort of where I'm at in terms of the context of our discussion today.
Dr. Gavin, the question I posed to Dr. Coleman was, after watching it, and when was the first time you learned about the Tuskegee experiment, and what was your first response when you learned about what happened in Tuskegee so many years ago?
Thank you very much, Ellis. It's a pleasure to join you and Dr. Coleman. I'm a native of Alabama. I was born and raised in Mobile. And so the Tuskegee study was something that was very much present and an item of discussion for us, even in our early years. And of course, what we extracted from that was summarized very nicely by Lenore, because I think clearly it was one of those Nazi-like invasions of the integrity and health and safety of a community, a population of people. Reprehensible. It violated every known moral and ethical code, and it was even in violation of the Nuremberg Code by the time that code was written post World War II. But clearly, what we understand from that study was that at that time of the Tuskegee study, and Lenore is very correct in pointing out that this was a study of the United States Public Health Service that was performed in Tuskegee. At the time of that study, all of the owners of scientific information, all of the deliverers of medical care, all of the healthcare policymakers and the guardians of healthcare quality and safety for patient issues, all of those things were invested in the hands of white males, by and large, who were indifferent to the value of Black lives. And of course, there was a long legacy that came from that, and that was this mistrust of medicine in general, especially mistrust of medical research, and a mistrust of healthcare providers, particularly healthcare researchers who don't look like us. Now we have actually framed solutions to many of those barriers. And I think that's why you're hearing us say that important lessons come out of the Tuskegee experiment, which is what it was, a dastardly experiment. But those are lessons that have led us to where we are now, which is a much better and different place. And COVID-19 presents us with a very different profile of what we can now do and should do to prevent a major and dangerous disease, which for COVID, unlike syphilis, a treatment was developed. We don't have a treatment yet for COVID. We simply have to focus on prevention.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when we're talking about what happened specifically in that study, you're absolutely right. When we're in 1932, there was very little regard, if any, for Black lives. And so, and then we're not saying that there's so much more regard today, as we know in this year with Sandra Bland and James Garner, and we can go down the line. We understand that the fight for value on Black lives is still ongoing in 2021. However, in 1932, we can only imagine, many of us can only imagine what it was like then. If we think it's bad now, it was worse back then.
Oh yeah, much worse.
And there was no Black voices to be heard. We couldn't even speak up and speak for ourselves in that particular study. And so, and I think many times the context of the study has to be framed properly in order for us to really kind of understand it. We don't, when we talk about the context of the study, the context is they had misconceptions about Black people, Black bodies in general, and they used this study to try to verify their own misperceptions and misconceptions. And that's what the impetus of this study was. And they did many things along the way, dastardly things along the way, to try to continue that thought pattern, that thought pattern going. Now, going forward, here we are in 2021. So my question for you, Dr. Gavin, is how do you tell our audience it's different now versus what happened in 1932?
And I think, Ellis, that is really the key question. So first and foremost is that we are now talking about a system of clinical research, and that's what this Tuskegee study was. It was a clinical research study. It was just done under all of the worst possible conditions. But the system in place for clinical research right now is totally and completely different. There are now safeguards in place. There are legislative safeguards. There are patient-based safeguards that are in place so that anybody that wants to do a clinical study to find out whether a drug or a treatment intervention is safe and effective, you have to go through hurdles. And these are hurdles that now we are aware of. We are at the table. I chaired myself the Data Safety Monitoring Board for the VA Cooperative Study in Diabetes for 12 years. I was on the Data Safety Monitoring Board for the Diabetes Prevention Program. We have now well-placed persons like myself, Dr. Coleman, in the entirety of the clinical research infrastructure. Legislatively, you have to have institutional review boards to even speak to whether or not a study is going to be allowed to go forward. And at every step, you have to have levels of transparency about what is going on in the study. What have you found out about its safety? What have you found out about its efficacy? And that information is publicly available. Anybody in our audience today can go into the record now, can go online and find out who was in the studies that were done on the COVID-19 vaccine. What percentage of African Americans, for example, turns out to be 25%. Lenore talked about how little the representation is in many studies we have. We know for certain studies like this, you need to have over subscription because of the vulnerability of the patient. So all of these safeguards are now in place, but more importantly, the information that is being generated, the people who are participating in these trials are people that look like us. And we were not always at the table. We are very much at the table now, and we make sure that the veracity of the information that is being conveyed to our people is absolutely pristine.
Yeah, Dr. Coleman, it's been estimated that once the results of the Tuskegee study were revealed, that it lowered the life expectancy of Black men, Black people, I think I want to say Black men, in this country by 1.4 years because of that distrust. You have participated in seeing clinical trials and clinical studies executed. What do you see, and how do you see us bridging that gap to where there is some level, a higher level of trust between the Black community and the medical profession?
Yeah, so that's such a good question. So this is my I guess sadness with this. The fact that it is so difficult to get African Americans to participate in clinical research means that when a new drug or a new therapeutic or even a new device comes out on the market, we don't have the representation of the African American population in that study. So let's say, for instance, let's say a drug is being studied for the management of hypertension. Well, African Americans have the highest rate of hypertension in the world, yet they're not in the studies because they distrust the study. And therefore, we don't know if that drug that is going to be used for a disease that they probably have or someone they know has, we don't know if that drug may work in them. It may not work as well in African Americans as it works in Caucasians. Or even yet, maybe it works better. There was actually a drug called Bidil that was used, that a study was done for the treatment of heart failure. And it was a study that overpopulated the number of African Americans. It was called the African American drug for heart failure. And what that study showed was that particular combination worked better in African Americans than it worked in Caucasians. So because we're not allowing ourselves to participate in these trials because of distrust, because of this concept that you're a guinea pig, that now is making it so that when in fact that drug comes to market, we don't have the data that we need to see if it works as well. Is the dose, should it be different in African Americans? Maybe it works better in African Americans. We don't have that information. I also wanted to just make a comment again on the two important things. I don't want this to get missed. That data safety board that is on every clinical study that is done now, they actually get to see the data. See, most studies are what they call double blind, so that the patient doesn't necessarily know what they're getting and the clinician doesn't know what they're getting. But the data safety board does. They're able to see the data. So if any kind of side effect or any kind of of increase in deaths or whatever may pop up, that data safety board is privy to that. So that's why when we're talking about these vaccinations, both of those studies have that board on site. In fact, you saw in the news that the AstraZeneca study had to be stopped for a minute because there were some things that had popped up and they needed to be reviewed. They did an in-depth review, and that study was allowed to continue. The other thing that I wanted to mention that Dr. Gavin said is this idea of informed consent. This is a huge thing that came about because of the Tuskegee experiment. So now before a patient is even allowed to be in a trial, they're giving this very, very detailed, in easily understood language, what the study's about, what the potential side effects are, what is the risk, what is the benefit. There are all sorts of pictures and handouts and all sorts of things that are done so that that patient, when they consent to participate, they have full knowledge of what the expectation is, whether they're going to get the study drug or they're going to get the placebo. So I think that is so important for people to understand.
Can I just add quickly to that, Ellis? Because the Data Safety Monitoring Board that I mentioned that Lenore just talked about, the Diabetes Prevention Program, which was the biggest federal study for the prevention of diabetes that has ever been done. I was on that Data Safety Monitoring Board. One of the drugs that was used in the original design of that trial was a drug called triglyceride. Absolutely excellent drug in terms of its effectiveness, but it had a problem in terms of damaging people's livers, and it was responsible for the death of a person. We saw that data and immediately moved, I and another endocrinologist moved to get that drug removed from the study. That is now what we're able to do by being at the table. And that's why this is so important. We don't have these kinds of things that get by anymore. And I think people should be reassured by that.
Absolutely. I guess my question for either one of you is, how do we find a healthy dose of not forgetting? Much like our Jewish brothers and sisters don't forget about the Holocaust, but they have moved on but they don't forget, but they're making sure that nothing like that ever happens again. How do we find that space as Black people to say, we're never going to forget about the Tuskegee experiment? I teach my children about what happened with that Tuskegee experiment, but I don't want it to cripple them to where they don't participate in their own lives and in the moving forward of Black people. How do we get our audience to find that nice space of not forgetting, don't let it freeze us and not participate in clinical trials?
I think that is really the heart of all of this discussion and what's happening right now in this space about COVID. Because one, a healthy dose of suspicion is a good thing because Tuskegee actually happened. But the fact of the matter is that those people at that time didn't know enough to be suspicious. They had no suspicions. We now have a great deal more insight. So we have to remember the lessons of Tuskegee so that we are informed in the way we think about things. Because you have the appropriate level of suspicion coupled with the right level of knowledge and insight about what has happened, you ask the right questions. And that's why we should encourage people to ask questions, but not let that be a barrier to participation, because you can't effectively use what we don't know if we don't have the appropriate knowledge about it. If a drug, like Lenore pointed out, if a drug hasn't been demonstrated to work in you, you can't really use it with much assurance that it's going to help you. So you have to be part of framing the solutions. And that's the package that we have to deliver. Suspicion coupled with appropriate knowledge so that you can ask the right questions and make sure that there is accountability from those who are asking you to be a participant. And that's basically what we're trying to do with everything that we're doing right now.
Exactly. So, I'm sorry. So the studies have been done, and there's a few studies that are still ongoing. I don't know if any of your audience out there, but I actually watched that FDA advisory board meeting. I watched it. So I could see what these world-renowned scientists that were not being paid by the pharmaceutical companies, that were totally independent. I watched their deliberation of and their look at the data. This is data. This is black and white. This isn't something that's made up out of the sky. I watched them look at that data and come to the conclusion that the vaccines that have got that emergency use authorization, that those vaccines, the risk versus the benefit of bringing those vaccines to the market as quickly as possible was so overwhelming that that advisory board agreed to make that recommendation to the FDA, which then goes back and takes that recommendation and evaluates it some more before they then give their blessing. So you can be assured that when I'm just waiting. I can't wait to get my vaccination because I need to be sure that I know that the data was good. I feel comfortable about that. And as soon as I'm in the next tier of people who can receive the vaccination, I'm going to be the first in line, because this vaccination clearly is going to keep you from dying. And I'd like to live for another 30 years if possible.
And to that point, I've already got my appointment. I'm scheduled to get my vaccination on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. I've followed the data closely. But Ellis, you know what? We also need to make sure we give people the tools to find the kind of information that's out there. The data's out there, but you have access to it. You can go online to clinicaltrials.gov. You can go online to johns-hopkins-medicine.org or the EDU, and you can find out what those data are, what the studies are, and how it applies to you as a person of color, as an older person, as an obese person. So those are the kinds of tools that we need to make sure anybody that has the sophistication to go on social media, they can go online and find out this kind of medical information as well.
Exactly.
Well, we've done that at Black Doctor. I'm going to do a shameless plug right here. And we've done that at Black Doctor. We have a COVID channel. We have a COVID information, and we're updating it daily. We do keep track of the number of deaths, and that's really important. And it's important for Black Americans to understand that even though I think I saw in one of the comments earlier on the promotion of this, that they said, well, Black people are only 18% of the COVID cases. And yeah, that's true, but we're dying at but we're 13% of the population. So that means we're getting it at a higher rate, and we're absolutely dying at a higher rate from complications due to COVID-19. And I also want to clear that point up. People don't die specifically from COVID-19. They die from the complications brought on by COVID-19. So they may die of something else, but it's complications from them contracting the virus. And so we have to be very, very specific about that language, so people don't say, well, I died from COVID. No, you may have died from complications, COPD or something in your respiratory issues, like the doctor in Indiana, Dr. Moore, that passed away tragically. So we do have to give the context for people and understand that there is information. You're right. There's information. There's a whole lot of conspiracy theories about the vaccine, about what's going on. But there's also a whole lot of real, honest, factual information that you can find from trusted sources. And we'd like to think that BDO is one of those sources.
Right. Right.
So Tuskegee happened, and just to give the full robustness of the story. There was a young scientist there in the 1960s as the study was continuing on, and started and realizing it was unethical, brought it to his superiors, and they basically were like, okay, we understand that, and they chose to continue. That young scientist was dissatisfied by that. He felt compelled by his moral obligation and leaked the report to the press, and that's how we found out about it was printed, I believe it was November 16th, 1972, that the study was printed, and the world found out, and then of course it was subsequently shut down after that. Now, Part of the tragedy is that the family sued and they received $10 million. And so we say in 1972, yes, $10 million is a lot more than it is today for what those families endured. We're talking about wives got it, children got syphilis. We had people that had mental illnesses, suffered, damage that they didn't need to suffer from. I think $10 million is a little bit small amount for those families. What we have to understand going forward, and what we need to, and I'm going to get to some of the audience questions, but please stick with us because there's a lot of questions about the COVID and the implications on COVID. And so, but I really want to kind of wrap up the past with regards to the Tuskegee experiment in terms of, we know about Henrietta Lacks, we know about the Tuskegee experiment, we understand that the father of gynecology has been known to experiment on Black bodies without anesthesias. We understand that there were hysterectomies that were performed without informed consent. That was all in the past, and we understand we don't want to forget what happened, but we understand that is the learning tool that undergird the Black medical professionals today. Dr. Gavin, as a Black doctor, how important is it to you to make sure that you are standing in the gap for Black Americans when you are practicing medicine?
Well, as a Black doctor, I consider that it is part of my professional, my moral, my ethical responsibility to represent people who look like me, who have been underrepresented in this space. So I have first and foremost an attitude of advocacy for all patients, but for particularly for those that have been victimized in the past. So that's why we have, quite frankly, an organization like BlackDoctor.org. Okay, that's why we have the National Medical Association. That's why we have the Association of Black Cardiologists and the Association of Black Nurses, because the fact of the matter is that we have to incorporate into our ethos that kind of mindset, that we have to be standard bearers. We have to stand as guardians to make sure that these kinds of excesses and these kinds of disproportionate impacts on our population are not permitted. And that means we make sure our patients know what is appropriate and how to make sure that they get the best possible delivery of these kinds of services and information.
Yeah, I just want to also mention that Healing Our Village, we've been in operation now for about 25 years. I started in the area of health disparities because my pastor died in the pulpit of sudden death. He had diabetes, he had high blood pressure. And so if in fact you see information, there's questions, I'm hoping that you're getting your information from blackdoctors.org and from reliable sources. But if you have questions, that's what Healing Our Village is here to also help with on the consumer side. The consumption of correct information. And you can call our 800 number, 800-788-0941. We are here right now during this time period, focused on making sure that people have the right information, that they can interpret the information that's out there, making sure that what they're getting is accurate. And we're here for those patients throughout the country and throughout the world, because we do global health as well.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start shifting to asking some of the questions that are coming from the people that are watching. For the most part, all right.
I just wanted to give y'all the first 33 minutes of that. The rest of that is question and answers regarding the people that actually had tuned into that and that were a part of the actual discussion. So let me get off that. And let me go back to, let's go back to the actual report, right? So, we know what they did was inhumane. We know that 600 men volunteered for a study. Out of the 600 men, 399 men actually had syphilis. 201 didn't. Out of the 399 men, you know, they had complications, things transpired, they faked the funk, they just kept prolonging and studying them. A vaccination existed. A treatment existed. Treatment was refused to them. They began to continue to study and study and study and study. These people, some dying, some having long-term effects. Other people ended up being infected with the syphilis, and all of that had transpired. So when I say people have been infected with syphilis, I'm talking about women were contracted from the men. We know that during the studies, I'm gonna say it again, during the studies, the men already had syphilis. The 399 men already had it. The crime was the refusal of treatment. They literally did a study to see how it would exist in the population and not provide assistance. It didn't sit well with the scientists. That was in the studies in the 60s, like he said, he turned around and started telling, and later on he would later go and he would tell, let me go back. He would go and tell Gene Heller, Peter Buxton would tell Gene Heller. Peter Buxton was the source. Gene Heller was the newspaper writer for, of the Associated Press. And then, that would blow up the spot on the whole study. A board was organized. And in the organization of that board against the study, this study ad hoc advisory panel released a 50-page document that talked specifically about the study. What you're looking at on the screen is a PDF version of the study. For those who haven't seen it, haven't watched it, just now joining the discussion. And blindly, I'm just scrolling through. I'm not reading anything, but for anybody, there you go right there. So I'm gonna read this. It says the difficulties inherent in evaluating the scientific merits of a particular study are demonstrated by the ongoing differences of opinion among scientists of the PHS as to whether continuation of the Tuskegee syphilis study can still be defended on the ground of scientific merit. It is necessary for the review committee to scrutinize carefully the research design of every proposed study if the requirement that risk be balanced against benefits is to be taken seriously. For the acquisition of knowledge depends so much on the soundness of research protocol. Does the informed willingness of the subject to accept certain risk have any bearing on the committee's balancing of risk against benefits? Finally, since the design of Tuskegee study could not completely exclude the possibility that non-subjects might contract syphilis from untreated subjects, how should a review committee have balanced risk to non-subjects against benefits to society? Review committees are also required to determine that the rights and welfare of the subjects involved are adequately protected. What rights did the Tuskegee study subjects possess? The tremendous confusion which exists in the area of patient subjects' rights in parts that results of traditional but largely unexamined prerogative of professionals to intervene in their patients' behalf without full disclosure whenever it is supposed to be in their patient's best interest. The doctrine of informed consent has had little impact on the long-standing professional practice. Since much medical research is carried out in the context of patient care, the right to make decisions for patients has more often than not unwittingly been carried over into the research domain. The confusion about patient-subject rights is bolstered by the scientists' felt obligation to advance knowledge for the good of society, although society has inadequately defined the extent of this obligation. To illustrate the confusion about the subject's rights, can the subject claim the right to be indemnified for any harm he suffers as a result of the research, regardless of investigators' fault and in spite of the consent? If so, who is responsible for informing him that an injury has occurred which is not the result of the natural progression of his illness? Do Tuskegee study subjects have a cause of action because they did not receive suitable medical treatment? If so, who may be liable? The individual investigators, the PHS, the Milbank Memorial Fund, the Tuskegee Institute? The intramural guidelines of the PHS and the Institutional Guide of Due Policy of Protection of Human Subjects to also identify confidentiality as a right which must be protected. Does confidentiality extend only to the subjects involved in the study, or does it also include this group of which he is a part of? If the latter, what are the limits of the group confidentiality? The Tuskegee study, in common with many other studies, singled out one particular group and revealed much that was intimate and private about all its members. Where can review committees seek guidance in devising procedures which safeguard subjects' rights in general and their rights to confidentiality, privacy, and respect in particular? The jurisdiction of institutional review committees encompasses any activity which goes beyond the application of those established had accepted methods necessary to meet the subject's needs. How are established and accepted methods to be ascertained among established treatments? Should distinctions be made between those of a proven and those of dubious value? What are the criteria for necessary intervention? Since there is no such much professional disagreement as to when a procedure becomes therapeutic, the question must be posed: accepted by whom? Was the withholding of arsenic and heavy metal treatments at the beginning of the Tuskegee study a therapeutic intervention, since the effectiveness of such treatments was in doubt, particularly for late syphilis? When did penicillin treatment become an established and accepted method? What degree of certainty is required as investigators and review committees? Certainly, no clear line can be drawn between experimental and routine treatment since, as has so frequently been asserted, the therapy of disease is and always will be an experimental aspect of medicine. I'm gonna give you some more. They going in about the whole experiment. See, we had it wrong. We were taught by people in our community that they gave these people syphilis. We didn't even think to consult the people involved, nor did we even think to consult the actual documentation that sprung the leak on the whole study. I want you to think about that. Think about how you've been confused about this particular study because somebody assumed that they gave somebody syphilis. And this lie is regurgitated over and over and over again. It was treatment that was being refused to the people. It ran a risk of exposing it to other people in the community. This behavior was not humane. It was insane. But it was a scientist who revealed the study to the public. He's like, look, we have a cure for this. Why are we not treating these people? We have a cure. We have something that can treat syphilis and we're refusing to give it to these people. Why are we doing that? Oh, you can't answer? All right, I'm going to the Associated Press. He goes and tells the story to the Associated Press. It leaks. But some kind of way, we in the Black community don't get the story exactly how he told it, because he is the source of the leak. So instead, we listen to people who want to fight against science, right? And this is one of the stories that they use to fight against science. Outside of Henrietta Lacks, they use They use this to fight against science. Talk about guinea pigs. Talk about treatments. Talk about vaccine. Nah, you ain't gonna experiment on me. It was a study. It was never an experiment. And they refused to treat them. And now you should know. So as I conclude with this, before, I ask any questions and things of that nature, we all should be aware that what happened didn't happen the way it was told to us initially. Science revealed, listen to me now, it revealed the inhumane behavior people had for us in the 60s and 70s. They refused the treatment. And that goes back to the science, the actual doctor that was on pseudo killers. It goes back to her point. Don't let the behaviors of people in the past destroy your future from getting the help you need from fighting this novel virus that we face today. I'm summing it up. She didn't add the last part. I did. And boom. Floor is open for any questions, comments, concerns. The floor is open. The doors of the church are open. Remember, I left all documentation that you need to further study any of the Tuskegee study. The reason being is because I think that when people use that incorrectly, you can be like, I understand and I feel you. However, I would highly recommend you either watch this YouTube video or these sources. Boom, 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 boom. Now, our people, they may not want to read. So, giving them a YouTube video, if they're going to find it interesting to watch, we'll do that. If they don't want to watch it and refuse the actual video, then they love the belief. We can't continue to live a lie. We have to properly educate ourselves. We have to have some clear-cut understanding of what actually took place in Tuskegee. And we have to get out of our own way and progression ourselves scientifically because we're behind. And we're behind because of a lie. And our people regurgitate that lie. And there are platforms that are built with a lot of followings to continue that lie. And that lie has been sold on a DVD, right? Hidden Colors. That lie is on Hidden Colors twice, right? And none of them had thought to go grab the primary sources or even to interview the people in Tuskegee. Any of the descendants that still live in Tuskegee. Kyle, as you've seen, is a descendant. He could guide you in the right direction. He can tell. He could have told. What's your boy name? Tariq Nasheed. He could have told him, brother, if you want to know the truth about the Tuskegee experiment, you can go down there. Baba James Smalls, you could have went down there and talked to them people. You know what I'm saying? All the people that have told us that they experimented on these people lied to us. I'm not saying James Smalls lied about anything because I forget what his take was on that, but they lied to us. Got us regurgitating this lie for for a long time, and nobody sought to read the actual primary documents. This been regurgitated on Facebook, shared 100,000 times, and nobody thought, oh, hold on. Well, who was the person who actually exposed it? Oh, wait, who did he expose it to? Like, none of that. I'm joined now by the great brother Malcolm.
What's going on, family?
What's good, bro? How you doing?
Man, not too much, man. Amazing presentation, man. Glad you hit on it. And they made some very good points too. The black doctors in the video.
They did.
You know what I'm saying? Explaining some of the things that came out of it. Although it was a terrible experiment, you know, it was a double-edged sword. Reason why I say this because it did way more damage than it needed to do. You know what I mean? It did way more damage than just the mistreatment of 600 African Americans and their families. But it created that doubt in the African American community for decades since. And so we could potentially miss out on some things as they stated in the video. But on the flip side, it led to different ethic committees and a different legislation that would now, create those review boards to make sure test subjects and things, that things would be more fair,
right,
and more transparent. And then even some science behind the blood work of the men in that experiment. I think there were even some findings too that came out of that. Different treatment protocols and regimens and things of that nature. And as a medical professional myself, yes, the responsibility of bridging that gap, that should be one of the ultimate responsibilities of people like myself, like my brothers and my colleagues, and even other co-workers, bridging that gap between Black people and the medical and scientific community, which is another reason why I big up what y'all do on a daily basis, man.
Appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that. Were you aware that they did this same experiment in Europe?
Yeah, Norway, the Norwegian OSO study.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about 2,000 white participants. Was it 2,000 or was that number too high?
I can't remember how many, but I think you're close.
And I know that they, they studied syphilis in that group, and this was before the 1932 syphilis experiment, where they did this with those guys, and of course with the experiment with us, from 1932 to 1947. There was no treatment. And so when penicillin became available in 1947, they didn't provide them with that treatment for the people at the time that it came about. Instead, they wanted to continue to study the effects of syphilis on the neurological system, the brain, and the hearts of African Americans to see how, and this all of this really kind of came out sort of as a result of that OSO study. They said, well, we saw it in white folk. Let's see what it's like in Black folk. And one of the doctors I forgot his name, that was involved in that syphilis study was the same doctor who was involved in that Guatemalan study where they did infect 600 to 700 men and women in jail, prisoners with syphilis. There was an infection with syphilis that did occur with the Guatemalan study, if I remember correctly. And that same doctor, after 1947, became involved in this syphilis study. And it made me wonder, is that how it gained this reputation of they gave him syphilis? Or maybe that may have added to the confusion about what actually happened.
Yeah, man. Good points. Good points right there. I'm more concerned with our ability to be able to digest information, right? Like we took to, let's be honest, we took to the lie. Like, man, they gave them syphilis without even researching it,
Right.
we continue it. Like, we done been in plenty of conversations where we on a Facebook post and somebody posts something, and the first thing that come out of people's mouth is, just look at the Tuskegee experiment. And every last one of us say the same thing over and over. Well, tell us what happened.
Right.
And they regurgitate the lie. They gave them folks syphilis.
Man, you are so right, man. And the way I stumbled across the information is Well, I'm gonna say I also at one point believed that they gave us syphilis until I looked at it and said, "Well, damn, no, they didn't. That's not what happened." And I got into a debate with a guy, and so like right there on the spot, I said, "You know what? Instead of reading these articles, let me get the book that he claimed that he had. Because he claimed he had a book called Medical Apartheid. He said that in that book, she claimed that they gave syphilis. I was like, let me read that book and see it. And I read the entire book for that matter, but specifically for that particular reason. And I was like, nah, I don't see where she's saying that happened. I see what she said. She understand why people may, may have asked themselves, how do we not know that they didn't? But that's not the argument, you know what I mean? So she did clarify on that end. But I also read a book too. What's the name of the book? God, I gotta look the book up by Lamont Ayadu, Brazilian Slavery or some of that nature. I forgot the name of the title, but he talked about about syphilis running rampant in the African, North American and African American community, where syphilis was so rampant that in South America they used to wear it as a symbol of masculinity, because it meant you was having sex.
Mm-hmm.
So before people get to the point where how we know they didn't infest the entire community over there with syphilis. I mean, it was a real disease, along with yellow fever and smallpox. Although smallpox was earlier.
Facts. So yeah, man, I just think that at some point we have to, as a people, we have to assume the responsibility of knowing what happened. What happened? You know what I mean? What happened?
Facts.
Evidence. Where can we get the evidence? You know what I'm saying? If they had a whole 50-page paper and other governmental documentations that told us what happened. He was like, nah, they can, the next one is this one. Nah, they can make up anything. They gonna write it their way. The dude, the scientist, who told the newspaper is the one who leaked it. It wasn't no black folk that leaked that. That was a scientist. He told it. He told it. As a member of the study, he told it. He broke it down. We are not treating these people, and we have the ability to treat them. And here we sitting over here, and we steady mo thinking like they done gave these people syphilis. No, the refusal of treatment was the issue, and we have to stand on that. We have to stand. There's too much information that we ignored, and we allow people to just lead us astray.
Right.
Because of the color of their skin. Well, the color of the skin of the person that actually leaked this story was a white man. He told us what's happening. That brokered the best deal that you just said earlier. That that led to us being a part of. Man, I didn't want that. That led us to being a part of the actual studies. Like, come on, man. How we gonna be a part of the boards and all of that if it ain't that? Now watch this. I'm finna share my screen again. I did put the link in the chat in case anybody had questions. You know what I'm saying? Let's see, don't nobody want no smoke. See my screen? Let's see if we can walk through this real quick. An ethical breach in the name of science. Background of the study. What is syphilis? Sexual transmitted disease. Symptoms include, but not limited to, sores, rashes, brain damage, and death. 3 stages of syphilis examined in this study, primary, single, or lasting 3 to 6 weeks. You know, they got all this right here, this whole timeline. Look how they doing. They did all of that. Look at that. Origins of the study. Initial goal was to understand and examine the prevalence of syphilis in Macon County, Alabama, among African American males. Funded by the Julius Rosenwald Fund. Cutting fund in 1931 due to racial associations of the results. 35% of African American males in Macon County had syphilis. U.S. Public Health Service, which is the PHS, conducted follow-up studies led by Tuskegee Institute, provided resources and interims, training. Dr. Clark, formulation of the study. Dr. Vandelier was selected the participants. They modified the goal was study the untreated syphilis in African Americans compared to Europeans, started in 1932. Sound familiar? Sound about everything we've been talking about. All right, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. The study included 399 infected African American men, 201 uninfected African American men. These men were promised free medical care treatment, free burial. The duration of the study was 1932 to 1972. How did the PHS prolong this study for 40 years? They faked the treatment. They pump faked it. These people had low literacy rates too. They did not treat the control group who got syphilis. The patients thought they were being treated. They promised a free medical care treatment and free burial. Ignore criticism from papers. Public was never informed. CDC, AMA, and NMA all supported its continuation in '69. The main reason for the successful prolongation, PHS prevented patients in the study from being treated, kept local doctors from providing treatment, informed Alabama Health Department to not treat the patients, informed the government military not to treat the drafted patients of the study, termination of the study. Peter Buxton, there you go. He is the reason why you know. And there she is, Jean Heller, Associated Press. It was published in the New York Times. There go the article right there on the right. And then the study ended quietly. Yep, they had ethical concerns. Never informed that they were part of a medical study. Patients were being treated for bad blood. Treatment was withheld from the patients. What caused the breach in the ethics? Early treatments using heavy metals mercury were not administered to the patients. The medical staff tracked the patients, assuring the patients were not administered treatment. Penicillin treatments were never given to the patient. All right, paid for the burials, enticement. The patients and their families were never told the bodies would be autopsied. Ethical or not, syphilis in African American males is different than syphilis in white males and needed to be further studied. Early treatment for the disease was dangerous. Many of the men were too sick for penicillin treatment to be effective. Outcomes? There go your boy again. Told you to see his face. At least 28 of the 399 affected men died from advanced syphilis. Some wives and children of those studies contracted the disease because the men weren't treated. National Association of Advanced Colored People, NAACP, filed a class action lawsuit. We all know what happened to the 10 million, and we all know the rest. Look what comes up. We'll look that up. National Research Act. Law created to protect human subjects in research, passed in 1974. National Commission of the Protection of Human Subjects for Biomedical and Behavioral Research was created as a result. The Belmont Report summarized the basic ethical issues that needed to be followed when doing research. So because of this study, an act was passed. That act, the National Research Act. We know about the apology. And there go his quote. What was done cannot be undone, but we can end the silence. We can stop turning our heads away. We can look at you in the eye and finally say, on behalf of the American people, what the United States government did was shameful. President Clinton. African Americans not trusting the public health system or the government. This costs us. This cost. See, this cost. But we ain't got to be the way that we are currently. With the new mRNA vaccines that are out right now, we can't use Tuskegee as an scapegoat or a reason why we don't know, don't need to know, and just dismissive of this actual vaccine that is out right now saving lives. So I'm gonna stop right there on that slide. I just wanted to run through them real quick. That was some, that was some good stuff right there. For anybody who want it, you know what I'm saying? I can try to make it available for you. I'll try to make it available for you, but that's just the small and skinny of it.
Yeah, you made a good point. We can't compare the Tuskegee experiment to a global pandemic. You got the entire world looking at these vaccines and its efficacy and safety. You got everybody's eyes wide open. This would be the worst time to try to do anything crazy for any organization or any person. And it's so many misinformation campaigns that people getting caught up in, and clickbaiting, and this quick instant explanations on complicated matters. We really have to do the work and investigate the questions that we have. Earlier today, I was literally having a conversation with a girl, and quite frankly, and with a guy who was alluding to the virus being fake, despite all the worldwide global evidence that an actual virus exists. At this point, it's a mental health issue. If you don't believe the virus real, like it's past being an idiot at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sute, you got a whole ranch in there. I don't know why you ain't posting the link. But here go the National Research Act that came out of the Tuskegee study. It was enacted in the 93rd United States Congress and signed into law by Richard Nixon on the July 12th. So because of the Tuskegee study, this act, they got your back with this act. And I'm not telling you to be a part of any study. What I'm actually telling you is that based on our research and the evidence that we have, and the more we continue to study the COVID-19, we are very, very much aware of what's going on. We have our own people as a part of the discussion. We have our own people on panels. We have our own people reviewing the data. All of that. Are we supposed to feel better about this? Moral is white folk in medicine across the board warrant skepticism. Well, Malik, medicine is not the problem. It's whoever's, that's an ethical issue with human beings. But that don't mean it much to me that you know what I'm saying? I don't care who it is. I don't trust nobody. I trust the science. But if you break a leg today, where you going? To the hospital.
Fact.
Who gonna fix? Who gonna reset your bone? Your doctor.
Fact.
And who gonna put a cast on you? Your doctor. What color is your doctor gonna be? He can be black or white. Fact. But I guarantee you, it's gonna be it's gonna be both of them in that room.
Mm-hmm. Good points, man. And I don't, we in one voice we do say we don't trust and yada yada yada, but in another voice we do trust a lot of the same groups of people that we demonize. And y'all make this very clear in a lot of the examples y'all use. You know, we eat food that's regulated by the FDA on a regular basis, using stoves, microwave, refrigerator. You know what I mean? Driving cars, wearing seatbelts. You got a license. So you're under the same regulations and rules as everybody else. And if you break a leg or get shot, you go into that trauma table where it's going to be probably tons of white people surrounding you with a few other people of multiple ethnic groups. Now, we do have more representation in the medical field now than we probably ever had. You know what I mean? Along with other, you know, ethnic groups as well. So whether you believe it or not, things are actually changing. And whether you like it or not, you know.
Yeah, that's facts. That's facts. I just think that that as a whole, man, we just need to know. You know, we need to do a better job in knowing. We don't need to believe, man. We too far in it to sit here and to believe. We need to demonstrate, you know, better understanding of information,
Right.
And take it how we take it, so that we can, you know, we can grow from it, because we live the lie. And I don't think y'all, you know, I ain't gonna say y'all. I don't think people understand the severity of the lie. We all regurgitated it. We all regurgitated it. You said the issue isn't the medicine, it's the distrust of the medical professionals. Yeah, there is a vaccine, but is that what they're giving you? Absolutely, Malik Reed. I'm getting the same vaccine that they gonna give Malcolm. I'm getting the same vaccine that they gave CK. I'm getting the same vaccine that the sister who created Moderna got. I'm getting the same vaccine as the people you seen on TV, bro.
Right. And check this out. Like, in today's time, you can pick your own doctor. You can go pick your black doctor. You can pick your family member if they're a doctor. You can actually do this. Nobody has to pick your doctor for you. You can go to a black clinic and get your vaccine shot if at whatever point in time they become available, if they have those by the time. For example, my little brother is a pharmacist. He gives vaccine shots. He ain't doing nothing to them valves.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? He's a pharmacist, straight up. He ain't doing nothing to them valves. He ain't with this shit. Excuse my language. It ain't happening, Captain.
Yeah, you can pick your own doctor. If you don't like the doctor you get, you can go get your whole nother doctor.
Get your whole doctor. My doctor's not a white man.
We ain't signing no contracts with these doctors to say they are lifelong doctors. People don't look. Peep game. Doctors want to make sure they treating you correctly, because they don't want to lose patients.
Facts.
Because if they start losing patients, they start losing money.
Facts.
You know, they like to have all them things that they got, so they try to be the best doctors in the city, the best doctors in the state. Like, okay, for instance, Dr. Andrews, the sports doctor, high profile doctor. If you tear your ACL, guess who you want to go see? Dr. Andrews. Dr. Andrews is linked to the SEC and the Titans facilities and every other NFL team around there that have injuries with ACLs. They go see Dr. Andrews because he the best. I played flag football with my homeboy Micah. Micah worked for Dr. Andrews. He in the sports therapy. He went to TSU, played football at TSU,
yes,
and then you know started playing flag. Now Micah then seen all the stars who done messed up their ACLs. They get them recoveries. They come see Andrews. Andrews is booked. Andrews repair knees, shoulders, elbows, whatever they tearing up on the football field, ankles. You remember when T.O. tore his ankle up and he went to go seek medical advice, a second opinion after he got opinion from somebody in Philly? He go to Alabama. They tell you on ESPN they went to Alabama to seek a second opinion. Who in Alabama? Dr. Andrews. But yeah, man, we get to pick our own doctors.
Yeah. And I want to shout out 3500 John A. Murray Boulevard. I'm a former team Tiger. Shout out to Boyd Hall, Watson Hall. Building, baby.
Shout out. Yeah. Gifted said, we act as if they got the bad bats sitting on the side waiting for black people.
Oh, man. Oh, that's funny. That's a good point.
Man, we got done, Dada.
Hey, what's going on? How y'all doing?
What's good, bro?
All right.
Not much, man. I just finally decided to join you guys' chat. I've been listening to you guys for a couple of years now. But I appreciate everything you guys are doing, man. Especially Sean and Malcolm. You recently joining on the front line. You're very helpful to the community. I just want to give you guys a big up, though. But I am in concurrence with everything you guys are saying, and we are actually like going backwards instead of forward with our process of getting better and staying up with times, you know?
Yep.
Hey, appreciate that, fam.
Yeah, man. Appreciate that big time, Don Dada. Thank you for supporting, man, and, silent supporting. We appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, definitely. I'm currently in the military, so I know firsthand on everything what's going on. I don't say too much, but yeah, I definitely know what's going on, and it's a lot of myths that goes on with the military as well. So I can't speak specifically for the military, but I can speak to my own experience. You know what I'm saying?
I got some questions for you if I can ask.
Go ahead, shoot.
Are they experimenting on y'all in the military?
No, it's no experiment. Everything is voluntary.
Okay. So you telling me that they giving y'all the vaccines and y'all ain't getting sick?
Man, look, the line is so long. Like we know as the military, our day starts early and we just trying to get done at the end of the day. But the line, like going to these appointments and stuff like that, the line was so long out to get the vaccine. You know what I'm saying? It was an all day event. I went in at 8:30. I didn't get done till like 11:30 because of all of the stations that we had to go pre-checks and sign in and getting all kind of information and stuff. So yeah.
Well, a brother Sutek in the chat was arguing with a brother on Facebook, Sabir. And Sabir at the time had some dude supposedly in the military come on, and he said that they be giving, military men and women all kind of experimental drugs, and that's why y'all come back from overseas and things of that nature messed up.
No, that's a lie.
Oh boy.
Everything that the military have is actually public. Everything that you go to do to go overseas, like some countries require you to have certain vaccines. Those are the same vaccines that the military get. So you got your Japanese shots, you got your malaria shots, not malaria, but you get your booster shots because we already had them when we was younger. So we had the smallpox shot, all those shots. Yeah, we get all those shots, man.
That's what's up.
So yeah, it's nothing that we're experimenting. And I think people get confused with back in the days how they used to operate. So we in 2021 right now.
Right.
I think that a lot of what veterans brought back with them was they call it PTSD, but you know, that's that type of a trauma is what they brought back with them.
Right.
One way to escape that trauma was through drugs, through experimental drugs, pills, cocaine, heroin. You know, those things that it helped them escape reality. When you look at a typical addict, they're trying to escape reality because they can't deal with living in a functional society like a normal person anymore, because that's what that addiction does, that high they chasing. And I think that's, you comparing that to, you know, actual vaccines and medication that actually helped the military. You trying to slide that in on us, knowing that some of these people had trauma that they was dealing with, that they couldn't get around mentally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In most cases, what you see, because I deal with getting people transitioning and actually people that retired. You have those people that have used certain drugs, and it's like, hey man, I don't like this drug because it make me feel a certain way. You have control for the most part of what you like and what you don't like. So, but you also have people that abuse it. So some people get confused with people that abuse drugs and the people that actually go to seek help, and use those drugs, responsibly. So it's, the military is, I ain't gonna say they private, but it's kind of like they kind of try to keep stuff in house so we can, so they know that, hey, I'm taking care of the troops for the most part, but at the same time, people gonna talk, people gonna speculate, and this is how misinformation get pushed out anyway. Just like today, it was yesterday, someone was arguing me that, yeah, the military, you guys is just experimental. It's mandatory for you guys, and I'm saying, like, shit, I know a couple of commanders that didn't want to take it. They opted out. Like, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't know where your information is coming from, but I'm in the front line. I know what's going on, but you have civilians, or you got people on the outside that's trying to tell you a story that's not real. So.
And to piggyback to both points that y'all are making, of course, I'm with the fire department, so we're quote unquote paramilitary. And none of the things that I speak or the comments that I have represent the organizations that I'm working for. I got to throw that disclaimer in there. But the PTSD, like I see that a lot, even in my profession. In fact, this 2020 was a horrific year for us as it relates to a lot of PTSD. And in fact, I signed up to join the critical incident stress team. It's like a team where you go in and kind of coach your peers. You kind of talk with them about certain calls and things of that nature. Because we see a lot, and so a lot of countrywide. If you look at people in their profession, their first responder profession, unfortunately, there are people who are using alcohol, drugs, and things as a coping mechanism, and unfortunately, some are even taking themselves out. So it's pretty similar to what some of our military brothers and sisters are and have dealt with in the past and present.
Yeah,
definitely. I seen I don't know who's pure black, but what Unc call him, Chatty Patty.
No, he joking on the suit on. Yeah. It's pure funny, man.
Yeah, man, dude, I'm about to retire. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, he messing with you. He said, "Oh man, oh yeah, he going to Malik. That's who he talking to."
Oh, okay. My bad, man.
Yeah.
My
mom over 50.
Yeah. You'd be surprised, man. It's a lot of young black people that's in the military. We do retire at a younger age, so this is why you see a lot of people that say, yeah, I've been in the military, I've been there, done that, and they still young. So we retire. Some people retire at 30. Some people, I'm about to retire at 44 or 45. So, and I still have my life though, but all that stuff that people be talking about the military being experimental, I just want to debunk that. Like, that is not really the truth, man. It's far from the truth. So
You know what, man? If I'd have knew that probably back in 2021, I probably would have been in the military. But having that Nation of Islam background, man, that anti-government rhetoric and all that other, all the other things that came with it, kept me away from the military, man. But now that I look up, approaching almost 40 myself, man, y'all got some mean benefits, boy. Woo! I wish I could have died from the military, bro. Woo!
Hey, look, the first thing, a lot of people don't understand that, like when a lot of black people join the military, they think they excluded from all of the other bullshit that goes on. But yeah, we still have it. That's why they had those same programs that the civilian has, what we call it, the Civil Rights Act. But in there, it's like the equal opportunity. They even have like the equal opportunity covers a lot of stuff. So yeah, it falls. Yeah, we still deal with the same scrutiny and same BS that everybody else deal with on the outside. The only thing different is we just wear a different uniform.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that we take advantage of the programs that they do have. So when you see that retired person that's like 44 and they look young and they ain't got to worry about the rest of their life and they getting like $5,000 a month. Yeah. Yeah, we taking care of them, taking advantage of those benefits because everybody else is, Yeah, we still deal with the bull BS, but just like we can deal with it on the outside, we still deal with it on the inside. So yeah. Hey Sean, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Man, I love your work, man, your research. I love all the information because actually I created myself my file, my notes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you do your shows, because I'm trained an instructor, when you do your shows, like certain points that you touch on, can you hit like the certain we talking about, MNRA at this point, we talking about X, Y, and Z on this point at marker 222 or what I'm saying? That helps me a lot because it lets me filter through some of the like the redundancy of some of the people that y'all be talking to because they talk y'all in circles though.
Yeah.
I was like, man, they dude got more patience than I do.
Yeah. Well, I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. Something came over me lately, and I was like, the old me, I just snapped too fast. So I try to be a little bit better. Just working at it with time, like trying to just, okay, let's see what they're saying. Even though you already know what they're saying because it's pretty much this. Let me just say it like this. All right, our brothers and sisters in the community that have a problem with vaccines, they argue the talking points of anti-vaxxers, Robert Kennedy and his whole party. The talking points don't change. They're all the same arguments. It's anti-science rhetoric. Okay. Now, if you know the argument, right, because you did the research for years. See, this is the thing. They researching in the moment. We've been doing this for years. So we just didn't start talking about vaccine science. We've been talking about vaccine science for a few years. And if you're studying, traditional African systems, practices, traditions, culture, you're going to find your way into avenues that's going to expose you to certain remedies that our direct ancestors was using, whether it be in West Africa, Central Africa, South, East, and Northeast Africa, right? We find those things. We find that in our studies. So then that opens the door for you to be able to discern, like, hold on, they had they use certain type of medicinal benefits on a continent similar to what's going on in America, except for the technology is much more advanced. Because I guarantee you this, if our African brothers and sisters had the same ability to have, the same scientific ingenuity as America has today, they would be further along on the continent than we would be here in America. What do I mean by that? They got more people. So they got more people in the field. They have more people doing primary research. They have more people doing it. They will have more people being able to do certain type of trials that will help them advance the continent and humanity in a way that no other people. Now, you don't have the same resources Africa has in China. You don't have the same. So China can only do so much, but that's gonna be in favor of the Chinese because the Chinese don't care about everybody else. The Chinese is worried about the billion people in China.
Exactly.
Africa has always been about everybody else. So, as long as they are scientifically crippled in certain areas, like right now, think about it, bro. They don't have the internet that good all over the continent. But you take America's infrastructure and you put it in Africa and you spread it out to where it all can evolve all over the continent. I'm telling you, the results from them people in the bush, or you talking about solutions? Man, look. So Malik says, gave them syphilis verse, gave them placebos, and watched them die from syphilis. Ain't that different? Malik, he said, Pure said, Malik, did you go to public school? Malik, you may have came in late, and I apologize. So I don't want to confuse you whatsoever. But we presented actual information that shows that the Tuskegee experiment was about 600 people. 399 of them already had syphilis. 201 did not have syphilis. The control study was to watch them, observe them, and not treat them. They refused to treat them. That was the human error. That was the unjust thing. Refusing to treat them. Okay? Now, good one, Pure, because he asked him if he went to a public school. You can't go to a public school unless you got vaccines. We all benefit from vaccines. At the end of the day, we're here today because of vaccines. Okay. We don't get measles, mumps, rubella. We don't get polio, whooping cough, chicken pox. It's 14 viruses or diseases that we don't get because of vaccines. I might have mixed it up a little bit, but we don't. You know what I'm saying? And those are the type of things that we need to pay attention to.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off. Man, you know what? So like all the sources and stuff that you did, you do post and I do follow you guys. And I think I stumbled on Vincent, the virologist, on what's the name of the show?
Yeah, from 12.
Yeah. So I downloaded the actual his course that he has, virology. Man, and some people are going to lose their skin when they find out that the food that we ate have viruses. We are viruses, and like we are so surrounded by viruses that you can't escape viruses. It just it doesn't harm us as the ones that is all viral. You know what I'm saying?
Right. People don't know the difference. People don't know. You're absolutely correct. And I'm glad that you did that, bro. I appreciate that because really what that does for us is that gives us an opportunity to do two things: to get college level information courses at no charge,
right?
And other to help. It also helps us bring that information back to our community, and we can give it to our community at no additional charge to them. And then overall, we become more educated on the things that we don't know anything about, so we can make informed decisions when it is our time to become vaccinated.
Exactly. Yeah. And here's the funny thing about this. Like, so when I got vaccinated, the person that was giving me the vaccine they opted out. And I was like, so you're giving me a shot that you didn't even take yet? Oh, I'm just gonna see see what's going on. And I was like, okay, all right. So if anything happened to me, I'm gonna come back and haunt you. I was just fuck messing with her, but yeah. But it goes to show that a lot of the stuff where everybody's saying that, oh, it's gonna be mandatory and stuff, and like the vaccine is this, and that. And you're like, yo, the VFW guys, they already took it. They was actually coming there and escorting us to show us where we need to go to follow the line and so on and so forth. So yeah.
And you know what I've found in educating our people is that they don't understand the immune system. I highly advise an anatomy and physiology class for all of us so that we can properly understand how the immune system works. And then when I see some of the people in the community who be talking at herbal and this and that, and I'd be like, wait a minute, if you proclaim to be so sharp at knowing about the body, why is it so hard to understand vaccine science? Because many people don't, and I get it. The immune system is, it's a lot, it's a lot if you really dive into it. But I definitely think it's a necessary conversation. And then in that way, we can get away from thinking that food is eliciting an immune response when that's not what it does unless you're dealing with an allergic reaction. But it's so much content and stuff on the internet, so many different teachers. This information is not new information. Like Brother Sean said, they've been doing it for years. So it ain't like it was some pop-up shop of information that they just started giving to people. They've been on this. And so now that the pandemic didn't happen, you got everybody now trying to cram all the little bit that they do or don't know to try to debunk people who've been teaching this stuff for 20 and 30 years. Virology is nothing new. You know what I'm saying? Vaccine science is not a new science. This vaccine that got out, this ain't the first one.
Right.
So
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So what I do know, like listening to and spreading the message, I think that when you guys do give a presentation, it's just about how we present it to the people, because everybody learn in different ways. And I learned that because I've been an instructor for like 6 years, and my soldiers that I train, they learn in different ways. Some people just like to visualize. Some people are just book smart, and some people are just, you have to actually give them a demonstration. So this is why we have a mixed stuff up. You have to mix up the training so that everybody can understand it, because everybody's not going to be on the same level. It's like, I don't know if Malcolm, you're familiar with Bloom or Sean, Bloom taxonomy.
Yes.
It's the level of, how level of learning and how you present. So that's how we have to kind of deal with our people as well. So it's a science to that too. Like this shit is not new. So I think that for the most part, the memes, short stuff, a lot of people, it's an attention getter. Oh shit, they saying that you might die if you get this shot, but actually you're not putting more information into it. So if you put like something that might say, hey, you know what, fun fact, X, Y, and Z, and then it might be perceived a little bit better than what's already out there. So that's just a little pointing for you guys when you go forward, because I noticed that when I'm trying to follow some of the podcasts, the guys that actually trying to, and this I ain't saying they slow, but I don't know how many times I could break it down to them. But yeah, at that point, they ain't getting it. They slow, but it's just everybody learns different though. So
true,
definitely.
Yeah, you're right, man. You got the visual learners, audio visual. You're right. This is one of the questions I have with people when they want to debate. And I got this from Neil deGrasse Tyson. Is there anything that I can say to you? Like, what would it take for you to change your position on where you are now? And if they tell you, go from there. If they say nothing, then there's no need of having a conversation. However, the reason I still entertain it, and I'm pretty sure Sean in the gang still entertain it, is probably to, because you may have people who are on the fence and who are watching to see what the responses are. Okay, let me see, can he answer those questions? If I'm listening in, and okay, I like the answers that he gave. Okay, I'm becoming more and more comfortable with this thing as I listen to him destroy the pseudo. Somebody's on the sideline probably watching it, and that's why sometimes I'll put somebody on the public hanging, put them up for public hanging, so everybody can see.
Right.
Yeah. That's the reason. To be honest, man, that's the real reason behind it all, is that, the truth of the matter is this, is that people are watching. They might not be commenting on the post, but they are watching.
Right.
And they're watching to learn, watching to know more. Or they might be, watching to learn the right information or the wrong information. And if you allow somebody to interject the wrong information over and over, that's what they're going to go to, or what feels good. We have to get into the habit of being uncomfortable in our research, because being uncomfortable in our research gives us the ability to get to the truth, right? Instead of it being something like, right now, Brother Malik saying he's not really an anti-vaxxer. His thing is with white people. Well, I'm like, Brother Malik, you gotta let that go, because it's evil people on both sides, bro. Mm-hmm. I ain't worried about when I'm in the hood. I ain't worried about no white person shooting me in the back of the head. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I ain't worried about no white person trying to rob me. They're gonna try to rob me a different way, right? They're gonna try to white collar me. They're gonna try to break into the bank, and they're gonna try to get all your personal, all that. They're gonna white collar the crime. Black people trying to go in your pocket right now with the pistol. And if they finger slip, you dead. They're gonna take your car. You said the lie and the truth both get the same weight here. No, it shouldn't. How can you give the lie and the truth the same weight? Nobody's doing it. I'm confused, but anyway.
Well, so what I noticed that about a lot of people that have pushback, there is some certainty, like certain words that you already pointed them out. Like in CK do pointed that stuff out, the logical fallacies and all that good stuff. They just use certain words. They pick, cherry pick what they want to fit their belief, and then they go with it. So you can sit there and tell them you're about to die in 2 minutes, and it's known that you're about to die in 2 minutes, but they're gonna say they're gonna take the word possibility, out of that and say it's a possibility that I might still live, and it's not sure. You know what I'm saying? That's what we're dealing with right now. So until we change our way of thinking, I think we're still going to be behind right now because of all of the stuff. We're still recovering from those horrible events and stuff that we we're dealing with. But people have to understand that you guys is definitely trying to put them on the right track to say, hey, listen here, you need to start reading a little bit more than what the people that you do believe in. So that's just that. And even in the military myself, I still have to research documents because I have to make sure that the information I'm presenting to whoever it is the right information.
Man,
that goes the same way out here with the doctors. They have an oath, we have an oath too. And this is why you see some leaders, they get demoted. Yeah, we call it the red carpet. And once you get that, you're giving bad information and you led your people wrong. You're out of here.
Yeah, you're right.
Definitely, man.
Those buzzwords and they kind of cherry pick some of the terms that you may use.
Exactly.
And then even, and when listening, word of advice to the people in the chat, if they don't already know, even when you're listening to the experts, they say stuff like possibility, potentially, may have, you know what I mean? It sometimes you can't always take that and say, well, look what he said. And I think somebody pointed it out. You know, they might ask Dr. Val, hey, what's your opinion on this? And he may give an opinion, and his opinion may not be right later on as time go on. You know, and they like, see, he was wrong about this, and you know, as if everything that he says has to be gold. So it's, you know,
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, Malcolm, because true story. Not too long ago, before Christmas, I was home for the holiday block. We call it block leave. We was on half day schedules, and I started getting this rash, irritation in my chest, right? And I'm trying to figure out what the hell. I thought it was just a hair bump, you know, because you shave, you know, I shave,
right,
you know, manscape, whatever. And I thought it was just a hair bump. Come to find out, like after Christmas, I went to the ER, and they told me, and I was like, I think you got shingles, dude. And I was like, shingles? What are you talking about? I'm 44 years old. Like, what? And they was like, yeah, this looked like shingles because it's on only one side of your body, and it's from the certain part. So, and he's like, did you have chicken pox? And I was like, yeah, when I was younger. Or did you have smallpox? Because, you know, in the military, they give you the smallpox shot.
right.
So that's still in the same family.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yep, you just have a reaction to it. But he said, I'm going to give you these, I think it's Valtrex. I took the Valtrex. I had to be on it for 10 days or whatever. He said, I want you to go to your provider and then go get a follow-up. I did the follow-up, and I was like, and this is the good thing about the military. You can do a follow-up, talk to your primary provider, and say, hey, you know what? I need another opinion. Can you send me to X, Y, and Z? And then send you a referral. So
right,
those options of making sure that you are diagnosed right, it's just like a lot of people don't like to use that. You know what I'm saying? So, and unfortunately, I did have the shingles. So it has a lingering effect of like, you know, like a burning sensation. It dried up, but I'm good. It's just something that some of us that's gonna, in our people that was born in the 70s that had, before they had the vaccine or whatever. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, Malcolm, even if you have the vaccine, you still have, you can still get shingles. Am I correct?
That I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure on that.
Okay, but I know he said that, like, even if you had the vaccine, this is what the doctor was telling me. But you know, but yeah, those are the things that I was dealing with over the course of last 10 days or whatever. So yeah, you can get follow-ups and make sure that what you got, you know, it's not life-threatening, and go check your provider. You know, you ain't got to trust everybody, but shit, I just want to make sure I was good.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my assessment would be that it's a possibility. Of course, at the time that we'd be getting no varicella shots, they was giving us a weak version of the virus. So, I mean, I would, my opinion would be that, yeah, it may be a possibility that you could probably get a mild case of summer shingles maybe. But I know I had chickenpox, so you know I'm on high alert period. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, exactly. And then my wife's friend is she works with medicine and stuff, so she's a what do you call them? Pharmacist. So we call her, and she's like, yeah, you can do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, okay, you know, but I still had to cover it, make sure that I go to the pharmacist on the base to make sure that everything is the same thing. So it's all good though.
Hey, I got a question I need to answer. Couple questions. So I'm gonna read them aloud. Malik, you just give up, bro. You give up. All right, I'm approving y'all messages because some on Facebook didn't put in there, but I just proved them. So anyway, let me go ahead and let me pose the questions that's asked. I don't know if the brother listening, I asked him to join the panel. He was on Facebook. He asked a host of questions. I was like, I'll answer your questions. or you can come on the panel and ask him. He said he didn't want to download anything. So, George Gully, if you're listening, his first question was, so was it an experiment or was it a study? We call it the Tuskegee experiment, but it is known as the Tuskegee study. All right. 600 black males, 200 didn't have it. How did they contract it, or it was not give to them? All right. We answered this, but they already had the virus. 399 people had already had syphilis. 200 did not. 201 did not. Then you say it was given to men in prison, and it was also an experiment, huh? Study overseas.
Yeah, that's the Guatemalan study. Sound like he's talking about.
Yeah, you talking about the Guatemalan or the Norwegian study? Okay, you talking about what happened to the Europeans? That was overseas. Maybe this George in the chat, he just trying to pump fake. And you saying this to say, and then he's saying you saying this to say what? That they also did this study on white people. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. It was unethical. White, black, red, brown, green, blue, don't matter. It was unethical, period.
Okay.
We should trust doctors. Absolutely. You should trust your doctor, not doctors, pluralize, doctors. Because if you shot, guess who you got to trust? A doctor. You break a bone, guess who you got to trust? A doctor. Have a heart attack, guess who you got to trust? A doctor. Brain aneurysm, guess who Dr. Dre had to trust? A doctor.
Yep.
Diabetes, Scarface had to be rushed to the ambulance. He was about to die. Who he had to trust? A doctor.
Matter of fact,
mama, grandmama, and great grandmama trust when they needed to have a baby? A doctor.
I think Scarface died from syphilis, if I'm not mistaken. Al Capone, anyway.
Now, he said, come on, brother, tell us the real. It's not just the Tuskegee experiment / study. The real is that you don't trust people, you trust science.
I think that was Al Capone, Malcolm.
Yeah, Al Capone died of it.
Yep. Scarface Al Capone died. Yep. Mess with them prostitutes.
Indeed.
So let me see. The world body of health is a world body that has been created to combat such malpractices. Facts. This is a different era, different okay, y'all still responding to the brother in the chat. Look, man, listen. I want to invite the brother Malik on. Brother Malik, join Brother Malcolm and Brother Dundada on this panel. You don't have to do all that typing, brother, because I'm tired of approving comments. And you can just come on here, bro. You can present your whole argument, and I don't even care. You present it, talk as much as you want to talk. You know, but if one of us cut in, it's only because we're trying to cut in for clarity.
Right.
So, you know, what you gonna do? Because we've been at this almost 2.5 hours, and I'm gonna give you a few minutes, and you know what I'm saying? I want to leave this digestible for the people. You know, we did an excellent hour and a half, almost 45 minutes of information. You know, and it's really for our kids. It's really for the adults in the community and things of that. Oh, pure crazy. Life has racism been eradicated. Listen, who cares about racism? Are we having a social discussion? We talking about medicine. He says, bro, what other area of life is shit totally different? Where in life has racism been eradicated? I'm not saying don't go to the doctor like some hermit. I'm saying niggas is justified in being concerned. Okay, nobody is arguing against people being concerned, Malik. You just keep going on and on, so people is like skeptical of what you really trying to say because you're not saying what you really trying to say. Because what are we skeptical about? What do you know what I mean? Like, listen, we have uncovered, science has helped us uncover unethical practices by people against us and other people. We can't act like we the only people that they practiced against.
Right. Like you wouldn't know about Piltdown Man. You wouldn't know about Henrietta Lacks or the Tuskegee experiment. You wouldn't know about the African being the first human on the country globe. You know what I mean? You wouldn't know about the rounded earth. You wouldn't know about so many of the things that you probably or likely agree with now. It was good science that brought that to the forefront over the pseudoscience that were being practiced by a lot of the early guys in white coats.
Mm-hmm. That's facts. So yeah, man, if you want to join or give whatever your opinion is out, you know what I mean? It's right there. Ain't no sense in fighting in the chat. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have contention with science, then you might as well just did the whole conversation. It don't make no point of going that way. You want to feel that they did anything, including with syphilis, try Guatemala experience. Don't try Tuskegee and black people. Yep.
And something else I noticed too, man, people think that we talk that science stuff that we don't know about the plight of African Americans. You know what I mean? Like that. Like
Give me 1 second, yeah.
Yeah, y'all don't get this thing twisted, man. Just we sit here and talk about sciences. Don't think we don't know about our history here in America and beyond. You know, we know about our experiences with the European and the Asian and all the other groups. So we ain't up here speaking like we don't understand the doubt and the concern and the historical atrocities done to us in this country. We know about Carl Linnaeus and Johann Blumenbach and Charles Pocock Jones. We know about even from a religious standpoint, instructions of the Negroes. We we're pretty well read about the history of our people in this country. We know about the old top bangers and the Petty Day friend, the Petty Day. Get the name of it. We know about the Khoisan sister that was being put on display across Europe and many other places, making money. Died at the age of 26 from I think an unknown disease. What was her name? Sister with the big old rump.
I can't think of the name of it, but I know what you're talking about.
I don't know why I can't think of her name. I've been getting brain freeze on the show.
What are you talking
about? The Khoisan sister that they had put on display back in the 1800s.
Oh, yeah, with a butt.
Yeah.
With Sarah Barton. Sarah Barton, right?
Yeah.
It's I forgot the name of the disease. I ain't say but yeah, I know what you're talking about though.
Mm-hmm. Brother Malik on the count.
Yeah. Okay. So let me be clear. I'm not no anti-vaxxer. If you're getting the vaccine, more power to you. All I'm trying to say is to completely discount the entire experiment or study, whatever, as something that was just like a freak thing that just happened in time, that just happened to happen to a bunch of black people at one time. It's not that's very it's dismissive of a thing that have affected our community for so long, and the way that we view medicine in the black community in general. Like that one specific incident for the last couple of generations has been a very prominent thing in our minds. Like I remember when I was in elementary school, Like fucking Clinton was saying some shit about this shit, and that was when I first learned about it because the nigga was apologizing for it.
Okay, so hold on, real quick before you go on. Who diminished it down to some small thing?
Well, it seems diminishing when you're telling people that these things were, or not you in particular. You haven't been dismissive of it. I'm talking about the people I'm talking to in the comments around. Yo, that shit was so long ago, or that shit was like that. Like you gotta put that shit to the side. Like act like that shit didn't happen. Like no, like people have very justified reasons for being concerned about what medicine are telling, or what medical professionals are telling them they are doing versus what they are actually doing. And because you have no control in the situation, that makes that thing that much more scary for a lot of people. Not even just black people. Like it's white people out there crazy about fucking anti-vaccine and shit because they fucking scared because they don't know what the fuck is really going on, and they don't have the time, patience, education, whatever, to like go and look into what goes into a fucking vaccine and shit and how that shit actually works. You just kind of you got to give them that baton of trust and just give it to them. So when we've done that, you really don't have a choice in the matter. Like you said, you break your leg, you got to go to a fucking doctor. That the fact that you have no choice but to do this or suffer. And then when you give them that, you're in a vulnerable position. You feel me? You give them that up to people. And when they take that trust and tell you we're gonna, or tell people, hundreds of people, we're going to fix this syphilis problem or whatever, or treat you, and they don't for 40 plus years, and watch you to literally sit there and document your decline of health.
Now
over
I got
a period of 40 years. Like you can't tell people that, or people. I don't know why people are thinking that this is some odd thing that in time that was fucking in the 1800s or some shit. This shit was like 50 years ago, bro.
Hold on. You're going too far. I wanna ask you this. You argue with people in the chat, but you don't understand what they're actually saying in general. And I don't think that the people in the chat are diminishing the role. The problem is that our community has forever been told a lie from the beginning. We have been, the majority of our people have been posturing a lie, saying that these people were infected with syphilis, that they were not refused treatment, which was the problem, and they were infected with syphilis. So that is the major concern. Now, we saying, it happened 40 years ago. It absolutely did. But what came out of that was the National Research Act. What did that allow? That allowed boards to be created. What they did then was they said, well, we just can't trust scientists with everything. So we got to have some ethical perspectives put in place, which should have already been in play, but they didn't have them in play. And it forced them to create boards. That was a win for humanity, but that was also a still a win for science, because it held science to a standard, which then would allow them to continue still do science, but have some type of procedures in play or some accountability in play that would actually require evidence for what they're doing, why they're doing it, and should it be continued or discontinued. So I think that they're not arguing against that. We've moved on in a sense of not letting it go, but understanding that we were actually regurgitating a lie. However,
can I jump in real quick?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I appreciate you for pointing out the myth of Tuskegee versus the reality of what was actually going on. But again, like I said in the chat, like giving people syphilis versus watching people die from syphilis while you're telling them that you're treating them from syphilis is not that different. It's really not, yo. Like if I'm watching, like they're sitting there over a period of 40 years watching niggas die, watching niggas perish from related complications. Like, yeah, 28 people died, but 100 more died from related complications.
You just can't say they, because it was them that was against it. Just saying they is not just.
It was one nigga that came out against it. That's one whistleblower. One whistleblower, and how many other people in this study watching this?
It's always one. There was one country that stood up against slavery before all the other ones followed suit. Does that just mean it's always one? But that don't mean anything. That one exposed what they needed to expose to the right people.
This is where I think it gets complicated when we get excited for things that have happened in our favor, and we kind of like take that and run with it. Like, yeah, we had civil rights and we progressed over the years or whatever, and shit, like, think good things have happened, but we also see like shit can go sour and the whole country can be opening the races in over a period of 4 years, Like, these people don't go away. So if there's one nigga on the panel versus how many other niggas on the panel that shit and watch that shit for 40 years, bro.
Right. But the medical white community is not a monolith. So it's not like everybody that's a white medical professional is out to see black people die. And you mentioned about the catching syphilis versus watching them die with syphilis. Well, and I mentioned this in one of the I guess videos that I did on the syphilis experiment, is that this understanding dispelling that myth, I think, is a major thing. I think it was big to highlight that they were not given an infection. I get the point that you're saying, yes, because the lack of treatment may have led to others, like their family members acquiring syphilis, and that's so. But when you look at a lot of those syphilis pictures regarding the Tuskegee experiment, what do you see? You see a white guy with 3 brothers or 4 brothers in the overalls, right? And you see a needle going in their arm. When I think, and this is just my opinion, that I think a lot of the correlation between a vaccine and seeing that needle going in people's arms, I think people have also allowing that to shape the reality of where we are now. And so that adds to I think it just adds to the black anti-vax environment or condition that we're in now. Because, like, what is the thought here? Like, there are millions of vaccines that are being given worldwide. Is there the belief that there's going to be a bad batch? Because even Sean can tell you, on January the 3rd of this year, I, as a registered nurse, was scheduled to give the vaccine myself. I was trained on the refrigeration of it, the temperatures, how much to give per vial, when to toss the vial out so that there's no human error in giving it. We have the representation now in those areas where we can create the level of comfort. And that's why I'm on the panel to this is where I'm here to kind of bridge that gap. Hey, y'all, look, we got this, yada, 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 these are signs, it's safe. Hey, and this is what Sean and them are doing. That we're trying to build that platform now to bridge that gap and create more of a trusting relationship between our people and the medical sciences and more. So it's not so much as us just trying to get you to trust white people in suit coats. Like, bro, we in the game too.
And that's wonderful, bro. I appreciate you for doing all that and getting the word out and all that.
Hold on, Malik. Hold on. I want you to answer my question. I want you to answer my question. Here's my question. I want you to answer it. Do you think that something similar to the Tuskegee study can happen today?
That's a good question, bro. And I don't know the answer to that. What I'll say is, I don't think that we should go into everything thinking that shit couldn't go sour like that. And me bringing up that whole, like, the myth versus the reality not being different. In the reality, they were telling them that they were treating them for something, and they were never treating them for anything. It was a placebo in that regard.
Do you know how that worked? You know how that worked?
How did what work? The administering of the drugs
that they're receiving a treatment. You know how they work?
From what I understand, it was supposed to be penicillin. I don't know what they were.
No. The people that they were doing a study on couldn't read. They didn't know what they was in for.
Yeah, because they said for bad blood. But again, like if you have syphilis.
But listen, hold on. I want you to think about it. Think about what I'm saying. They were illiterate. They couldn't read. They didn't know what to study. Bro, if them people could read, do you think all 600 of them would have been a part of that study? They wouldn't have got nobody to be a part of it because they wouldn't know what they were signing up for.
And the compound of matter, they had never been to the doctor before.
Yeah.
You think they want to go back to the doctor after that shit, yo? And do you think they want to go back to the doctor after that shit? You understand what I'm saying? Like why this can cause a problem in the whole community?
The descendants of the people that were part of the experiment are getting the vaccine. They came out and said they getting the COVID vaccine, and they go to the doctor regularly. These people,
as they should. Like, yo, I'm not saying don't get a vaccine. You know what I'm saying?
Think of the circumstances. Think of the circumstances for 1932 to 1972. Think of the circumstances, bro. They wasn't reading in 1932. They wasn't writing in 1932. Barely. Some people only had a fourth grade education, sixth grade education, maybe. These people wasn't getting educated like that. We're talking about Alabama, bro. We're talking about poverty. People, listen, if you go down there today, you could still see people with 2 teeth in their mouth talking to you.
Yo, my point here is that they were, whether they could read or whether it was on a contract, they were told something.
Yeah,
they were told something like, "Yo, I got syphilis, or I got something going on with my dick right now. I need help."
They were given
to a doctor, and the doctor says, "Yo, I got you," and then watches you die for 40 years. Yes, that's going to cause a trust issue amongst lots of people.
Oh, listen, bro. They gave them an incentive. Most people didn't even know that they offered them health care and burial and all these other things. They don't know any of that stuff. So
all they know is my dick is burning and I need help right now.
No, that's not who I'm talking about. The people that was a part of the study knew that they were getting free health care. They knew that they were getting if they died, that their burial would be paid for. Because in 1932, that was essential. Some people, when they died, they got buried in a pine box and then the dirt down on. Some people didn't even have money for that. But they figured that was the ultimate sacrifice to join the study. That's what I'm saying. Like, nobody is sharing what happened. I think you just got that totally misconceived in your mind, is that people are sweeping it under the rug. No, what we're saying is, and the reason for this conversation is that we were lied to. We had the incorrect information about the entire study, and people all over social media have regurgitated the lie so much so that I said, you know what, I'm just tired of it. Let's just bring it all the way out because people ain't gonna read. So I put this show together to show people that it was more than what they thought it was. To show, not to argue with anybody and say or make you think that we sweeping it under the rug. No, because that's the other side of it. And that's what the black doctors, if I don't know how much of this you watched, but that's what the black doctors also said. It did, and even the presentation from K through 12 and the last presentation that I showed is that it did more damage to science and the medical field because of that whole study. And it created a distrust that is stopping science from advancing further than it could. But we are trying to reassert, and reacclimate ourselves to something that we held in high regard once upon a time before a Tuskegee experiment, and even after a Tuskegee experiment. All of us went to public schools, and we live and we survived our vaccinations despite a Tuskegee. And I remember going to Vanderbilt. I remember going to Meharry. I remember going to either Vanderbilt or Meharry to get vaccines. It was Meharry when I was smaller. It was Vanderbilt when I got in middle age. to get my vaccines so I can go to school. And it wasn't no argument. My mama didn't argue about none of that or nothing. I had my shot records. I was legit. I was good to go. You know what I'm saying? So now we're at a point in a period in time where people act like getting a vaccine and your shot records up to date is a problem. It's not about it's no longer about the Tuskegee experiment. Yeah, it still has lingering effects. It's about what we are doing to move forward, bro. We ain't letting them off the hook for that. No matter what compensation or apology that they give us, they're not off the hook for that.
Right.
But we need to move further because we had misinformation. So now that we understand the misinformation and we slow the conversation down and we had it, we can now advance science, which means to know and to do. And that's how we going to advance the knowledge in that so that our people can properly arm themselves and know what to ask doctors and be prepared and know what's in vaccines, to understand what mRNA vaccines are, to understand we're in the middle of a pandemic, to understand the severity of there's consequences to just rejecting a vaccine in the middle of a pandemic. You could cause somebody to die, or you could possibly die, or you could come up with some severe long-term COVID. So it wasn't to go against any of that, bro. And that's what they're not saying what you think they're saying in the chat. They just not clearly understanding based on the conversation. That's why I said join the panel, because you could have been a little bit more clear. We could have summed it up an hour ago. But we stand on the same side. So they ain't fighting against you. We all fighting for pro-vax under the understanding of knowing what we're pro for. And if it's something that don't work for us, then we anti-vax. And that's why AstraZeneca was kicked down from the FDA, because they didn't like what was in the test result. And I told people that 2 weeks ago. I was like, man, we're supposed to have the AstraZeneca evidence. However, it ain't looking like we're going to get AstraZeneca until the spring, because science is saying, hell no. And the FDA is saying, hell no. We're not approving that.
Right. Yeah.
But man, look, we've been on this thing almost 3 hours, bro. I appreciate you, Malik, joining the panel. I am going to close out the show, man. What we can do, you know, one day when I'm off, man, you got time. You know, I would love for y'all to come kick it, build, you know, say your pieces, whatever, you know, if you've been studying, whatever your research is, give it to us, whatever. But in closing, you know, I'm going to go around. I'm going to let Mal go, then Dundada, and then Malik, I'll let you roll out before we close. So go ahead, Mal.
All right. Once again, man, as usual, I appreciate being on the panel. Look forward to future panels and future builds with all these brothers. It was a very good video, very informative. I do think it's important to bust the myths up so that we can get a better understanding of what actually happened and what advancements in ethics and other areas came out of it. So despite the fact that it was a terrible event, there was some good that came out of it, as hard as to believe as that may be. And we should definitely take advantage and don't lose out based on our misunderstandings and in some regard our mistrust in potential treatments for us in the future.
Dundada?
Yeah, I appreciate you letting me on the panel to express my experience throughout the military and my experience throughout vaccines or whatever, and to let you know that you're doing a great job and we have a little bit more in common than you know, but we can talk offline about that. And I appreciate Malcolm doing what you're doing. Keep fighting the fight, brother. And keep pushing that work, Sean. I appreciate you letting me be on the panel.
Appreciate it. Brother Malik.
Thanks, y'all, for letting me speak my piece, man. I'm gonna be on the next one when I see it on the stream.
Appreciate that, bro. Yeah. Feel free, you know. Well, on that note, man, you know what I'm saying? Y'all know how we rock out. It's Shimon Hotep all day. Depart in peace. And books was in. The books are in. Yep. They in. They're here. Man, I like to thank everybody for hanging out with me today, man. I know a lot of y'all clicked off, clicked back on, clicked off, clicked back on. We rock strong for 3 hours. Sister Terry, I apologize. I know I probably kept you up a little too long, but hopefully you got the meat and potatoes out of it, and you're able to learn a little bit more based on the information that is also in the description of the video. To everybody that will follow up and watch this video at a different time, I hope you learned something from it. Let's make sure that we are properly educating our people and having a correct understanding and doing the things that we need to do to advance knowledge. Science just means to know and to do. What I mean by to know, it requires you to know what the heck is going on so that you can advance knowledge. And to do is simply knowing how to do, using the correct methodology to do all the things that need to be done in order to properly come up with a solid conclusion. Because if it's falsifiable, science is going to reject it. Again, if it's falsifiable, science is going to reject it. That's why it requires you to know and to do. So if you can't falsify it, it stands as a scientific theory, which is an explanation of facts. And we will continue to build on a solid foundation. It is important that we understand what's going on in the middle of a pandemic. We have 2 mRNA vaccines in the United States. AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson are a little bit different. There's some viral vector vaccines out there. And then there's some other things coming down the pike. I am overly excited about the Moderna, not only because a sister made it, but because, they did some extra things in there. And they already came out and said, look, man, we seeing immunity over a year. We seeing immunity over a year, right? They boasted about that. Now, we can expect some data from that. We want the data from that. But around April, we're going to see, May, we're going to see Moderna and Pfizer file for their BLA possibly, to make this a full licensure vaccines. You know what I'm saying? And we need that. We need that in our life. And I'm ready to give my shot, man. You don't want yours, I understand it, but I've been doing a little bit more research than the average person. I'm not saying no to anything without actually properly doing the actual research. So yeah, I see y'all still vibing with me. And make sure y'all like this show. Make sure y'all share this show. And make sure you get this information into your family members and friends' hands, because they walk around with this misconception about Tuskegee and what actually happened at Tuskegee and what didn't happen at Tuskegee. You know what I'm saying? And I think that we all got to do our part in making sure that our people are up on this subject matter. Let's get the myths out the way. So for real, this is something that they can't just simply reject, because it might be that conscious stuff. Nah, this ain't that. This is that other stuff. This is something that they can vibe to. Send it to your ex-pastor, the deacon. Send it to the motherboard. You know what I'm saying? The choir. The conscious corner kids. You know what I'm saying? The rappers. All that. Get that information out there, man. We need to quit being lied to. Make sure T.I. get this. You got Instagram at T.I. He my favorite rapper, but You know what I'm saying? He mentioned the Tuskegee experiment studied twice in his rap, and he was incorrect the way he used it. So we need to properly educate Tip, David Banner, and others.